Teachers of Reddit, what was the most BS answer you've seen on a test, quiz, essay, etc.? I had a fellow classmate turn in a paper in Spanish class. He was a well-known moron. Teacher, John, please come to the front of the classroom. John, did you write this paper? John, yes, Senorita Lopez. Teacher, John, are you sure you didn't use a translator on the internet or something? John, yes, Senorita Lopez. Teacher, John, this is in French. John, crap. Comma John, crap. John, murd. FTFY. Once in my GCSE geography class we had a test regarding natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcano, etc. When assessing the impact of the damage a volcano could do, my friend forgot the word erupted and ended up writing, and I quote, the volcano volcanoed. After she'd marked them she had to read his answer out to the class because it made her laugh so much. I volcanoed in raucous laughter. Since I'm grading tests as we speak, let me pull one from the stack. Q. Describe how glaciers were involved in the formation of the Great Lakes. A. Glaciers were involved with the Great Lakes by forming them. Gave a geography test a month ago. Using the factors that affect climate, explain why Resolute is cold and dry. Resolute is cold and dry because it doesn't get very hot and there isn't much precipitation. A student was given a test that included a picture of a stalk of celery in a jar of water. The point was to discuss that water flows up the stalk to the leaves, blah blah blah. One student said, I don't know, I did not learn about celery. That guy was probably majoring in carrots. Q. Why did Mao and his communist revolutionaries go through the mountains during the Long March? A. To avoid the mines of Moria. We once did a presentation in biology in my sophomore year of HS. Great teacher who made up an entire murder story and we had to find the killer based on their string of DNA, and it was a great assignment. Afterward, we had to write a story based on the POV of anyone from the suspect list, which included a cat for giggles, and present it. One kid went up and said he was going to present from the POV of the cat. The entire freaking story was him meowing and my teacher was in tears. Cats see some things, man. Not a teacher, but I remember my friend's answer in a chemistry exam at school. Suggest a name for hydrocarbon. B. Paul. In my AP US history class I had a question that was something like, what were the Union and Confederates looking for that led to the Battle of Antietam, and I'm pretty sure it was a river or creek or something, but I couldn't remember at the time, so my answer was just, trouble. This one actually got a hearty laugh out of me. Great response. Just imagining two old Timmy armies prowling around looking to start crap. Q. Picture of starfish. What type of symmetry is this organism an example of? A. Symmetry. 100 level college zoology course. I once asked my grade 4 class to each give me a reason why they deserved free time. A lot of them wrote stuff like, I've been trying my hardest at school. I've now learnt all my times tables off by heart, and a lot of them said that they deserve it because they've been doing a lot of final assessments. I gave them about 14 in the past week. One of them gave me I got a beef wrap from the school canteen and it was just disappointing. I am trying to imagine one of my grade school teachers with an internet handle like Lunar Thunderfuck. Probably with Mrs. Sharp. Should be a Lunar Thunderfuck. I graded standardized tests one year, and one of the questions was about how to set up a garden to perform an experiment. Any experiment. That shows you understand how experiments are designed. One kid actually got full credit, hit every one of the metrics, by setting up an experiment on what might get Sally to frick him in the garden. It was something of a game for us to get to bring a particularly WTF answer to our team lead, and mine was at the top of the board for almost 2 weeks. Class, Environmental Law. Question. What is NPDES? Students answer, an acronym. I gave him half credit for being a smart butt. I gave an answer like that once. Question was why the glaciers of the Antarctic were made out of fresh water. Question was about the origination process. Got half points with because they don't contain salt. Didn't do that good on that test though. I had a friend doing a media course in college. He had some bull's essay that he had to write, and the topic was, is a computer a machine? God, beef and other mysteries. It was 2 pages long and concluded with the line, if cows don't exist, then God does exist, which means cows do in fact exist, therefore a computer is not a machine. He actually passed the paper. This is the best paper I've ever imagined reading. When I was a senior in high school, our literature teacher forced the 8 best students in his class to take the AP Lit exam, even though we never practiced for it and he wasn't really teaching an AP class. Sure enough, we were doing miserably and we all finished 40 minutes early because we'd all given up. The last essay question asked us to synthesize the themes from a few books provided on a list, only one of which we'd read in class. Flowers for Algernon. I turned around to look at the clock with 20 minutes left to see the kid behind me drawing the most fantastic picture of Algernon, a mouse. If you've never read the book, in high detail, with a sunburst behind him and a relevant quote surrounding it, it was nearly tattoo quality, all in ballpoint pen. I'm pretty sure he got a 2 on the test like the rest of us, but I hope the grader got a kick out of that. Teaching a freshman biology class at a community college. Short answer response prompt on the quiz was to describe the contributions of Rosalind Franklin. The student responded to the prompt with the entire "Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth" monologue from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. I chalked it up to a statement about underappreciation of female scientists at the time and gave him 2/10 points. Interestingly, on the same quiz he provided an exceptional 2-page description of supercoiling, carried over to an additional sheet of notebook paper for room. Odd kid. Sometimes you're just really studied up on the stuff you know and have no clue about the stuff you didn't study. Was a TAFE for microecon in college. Most of the students in the class were pretty bright, but there was one girl who really struggled all the way through. I felt bad because she was very nice, but when grading her quizzes it was clear she didn't understand the material. Anyway, I was moderating a quiz later in the semester, and halfway through I noticed that she had not written anything down. With 15 minutes left in the period, she stands up and walks over to my desk and exclaims, "I'm sorry, I forgot I couldn't work on Shabbos," and walks out. It was a Tuesday. Yes, but she studied for the test on the Shabbos and then realized her error and couldn't profit from her mistake by taking the test. Our French teacher loved our class but we goofed slack too much. On one of my French quizzes, the teacher was angry because someone put the French word for grass as la grasse. I had a class with a guy. I have no idea how he made it there. It was 3rd level Spanish. He tried to talk about his dog as el doggo. Dang. That was funny. Senior year AP class. It's the last month of classes and we had all basically stopped trying. Our teacher had a pop quiz that none of us were prepared for. The last essay was describe the significance of Griswold v. Connecticut. Thanks URRUG. I essentially wrote the plot description of the first vacation movie with my own insights into how it shaped laws. My teacher responded with the I award you no points speech from Billy Madison. He keeps the test to show students what not to do when you are unsure of an answer. A friend of mine is a high school English teacher, and once assigned his students a persuasive essay. Take a stand on an issue and write an essay supporting that stand, citing specific evidence. One student chose to do his on Stone Cold Steve Austin is the best wrestler who ever lived. Now, that's a dubious topic, but one could see how you could still attempt to write a good essay on that, citing his wild popularity, impact on the sport, etc. Nope. This kid basically spent a few pages rehashing his catchphrases. If anyone tries to mess with Stone Cold, he'll whoop their butt. The best though was the last line of the essay, which just closed with Stone Cold Steve Austin is the best goddamn wrestler who ever lived. Cause Stone Cold said so. Surely it had to be, and that's the bottom line. Chugs beer. Question. Describe the chemical difference between H2O and CO2. Answer. H2O is hot water, because the H stands for hot. CO2 is cold water, because the C stands for cold. Well, my shower has a lewd of CO2 then. I had a math problem in middle school that said something to the effect of John has a binder for holding trading cards. Each page has 9 pockets. There are 20 pages in his binder. How many cards are in the binder? I said there wasn't enough information because the question never said the binder was full or had any cards in it at all. Mrs. Nasson was having none of that. Or you could answer not enough information. It is not specified if John double pockets duplicates. I once had a student sit in the back row for an exam, stare at it for a half hour, and then turn it in. When I looked at it, his name was on the first page, there was a donkey doodle on the second, and his only answer was on the last question. I'm too high for this crap. He did not pass intermediate algebra. Well, this is an answer I can finally relate to. There have been many times when I've been high and really not wanted to be at the time. I actually am a teacher. Crazy, I admit. My first year teaching 8th graders, I got a lot of plagiarized material turned in on essays, but the one line that will forever live in infamy is that of the 13-year-old boy who wrote, "In my 28 years serving in the Air Force." Last question of a test. I can't recall what the question was, but the kid wrote down math as balls. Yep, the main issue was he passed because he got most of the other questions right. He wasn't a dumb kid, just lazy. I have to write government exams for my job to get certified, and a long time ago 2 guys named the Ginzel brothers wrote a pile of questions that can be chosen randomly for your exam. One of the questions that can show up is what are dilithium crystals used for, which has nothing to do with your job unless you work on the Starship Enterprise. If anyone's wondering, they are used to regulate the matter-antimatter reactions in a starship's warp core. I gave a pop quiz that just asked them to tell me something about the Reading, and someone went into detail about the Macklemore concert they went to the night before. I love rolling the dice on if there would be a quiz on the Reading the next day. Question: why do these molecules stay together? My answer: the kids. My teacher wrote her and I got a point. Teaching a college class in freshman composition, I had students write a brief in-class essay on how not to do something. Thinking that this would be more interesting than the standard how to do something, the student's essay, in its entirety, how not to write an essay, step 1. I was at TAFE for a very introductory physics class last year. The question was something like, Jane has a mass of 42 kilograms and is tied up on a platform on one side of a 30-meter room 20 meters in the air. Tarzan has a mass of 60 kilograms and grabs onto a vine swinging from the middle of the room when he stands 20 meters in the air. If he starts at an initial velocity of 0, what is Tarzan's velocity at his lowest point? What is Tarzan's and Jane's velocity as they are exiting the building? What I received for an answer: to the window, to the wall, till the sweat drips down my balls, all them be crawl. Jane can suck my dong. A ski sake mother sucker. A ski sake goddammit. Thank you for that. I about fell out of my chair at work laughing because that was so out of left field. As an engineering student and ex-physics tutor, I could definitely see this being written by the kids that come in the day before the final begging me for help with everything. Teaching at a college in Tanzania, I asked the students to write a basic information 1-page autobiographical essay so I could get a general understanding of their writing skills. 2 students copied off each other, a male and a female. One exam had a question on probability. It described a simple game involving a coin flip and asked what is the fair price you will charge your friend to play this game. One student carefully calculated the correct value for the game's expectation value, $1.20. Then, he concluded, the fair price I will charge my friend to play this game is $2 because I want to make a profit. That's not a BS answer. That kid's clearly actually thinking. Had a student refuse to answer a question because he felt it was racist. He was black and the question was about the black character Crooks from Of Mice and Men. I could have forgiven him if I was asking for anything about the names he was called, but this student, who didn't read the book, said, because Crooks was black, and he was black, I should just give him the points for the question. I gave him the points, then failed him, because he only got a 25% on the rest of the test. He called me a racist. My first year teaching 9th grade English, I had my students write an essay that was basically an analysis of a novel they chose. One kid handed in an essay that was very obviously plagiarized, and the formatting looked familiar. I looked the book up on Wikipedia, and sure enough, he had just copied and pasted the first couple sections verbatim from the entry for Goodbye Mr. Chips. I wrote 100 really big on the top of the page, and then wrote a bunch of stuff on the bottom of the page about how mature his analysis was and how hard he must have worked. I wrote turnover at the bottom of the page, and on the back of the paper I wrote just kidding really big, with an explanation of why his grade was actually a 0. When I handed the essays back, this kid got so excited that he had gotten such a good grade and fooled his dumb crap teacher that he didn't read the back and handed it to a friend to show off. I knew his friend took the time to read the back when I heard "y'all freaking idiot" from across the room. My students used to hand in plagiarized articles right off of Wikipedia without even bothering to change the text of links to black. They earned those zeros. I just recently taught a unit over Romeo and Juliet. While we read the book, I also allowed them to watch the modern Leonardo DiCaprio version. On the test, I gave quotes from the text and asked them to identify the speaker of the quote and how do you know it's the person who speaks it. One of which was "A plague on both your houses" from Mercutio. Who says this as he dies? One of my students wrote on that Romeo. I know he said this because I saw it in the movie. I once used the wrong formula on a physics question but also fricked up the calculation and ended up with the correct answer. The professor asked to see me after class to tell me that at first he had marked it wrong because he thought I had peeked and wrote someone else's answer at the end of my gibberish, but once he worked through my work realized how I got the answer I did. He gave me half credit because he had never seen it happen before. So there's that. In my sophomore year of high school, I was in the standard classes for everything as a sort of break from the AP stuff and was getting sort of bored with it. In my English class, we had an assignment to teach us about paraphrasing. The assignment was basically to read an excerpt from the New York Times about a bedbug epidemic in New York and paraphrase 5 sentences from the article. This article was about 2 columns long and really boring. I was done with my first 4 in about a minute and we had the entire hour-long period to complete this assignment. I could have picked any of the sentences and been done, but I decided instead to have a little fun with it. One of the sentences read, "When bedbugs are not eating or sleeping, they apparently spend their time fornicating," and I used this as my last sentence. I took the next page and a half to write out the most ridiculous and awkward bedbug erotica you would ever have the misfortune of reading. My teacher handed the paper back a week later and it was covered in red ink. Bleeding comments like, "and why," and in tiny numbers, like she was ashamed to assign me this grade. 100%. I had a lot of fun with that class. Sorry, Mrs. Swenson. Was a teacher's aide. I've got a couple. A student in an AP class clearly did not know any geography. In an attempt to get partial credit, they marked water as land. Nice try, had to give them a few points for at least knowing the names of locations. Short answer responses. There was a kid who would regularly answer in one sentence when it clearly asked for at least 5. They would be vacuously correct. I asked the teacher, she gave him full points most of the time because he was rather brilliant in class, just stupendously lazy as frick. 2 girls had carbon copies of their handwritten holiday break assignments, down to the goddamn tornado writing down the side and stupid contractions that made no sense. I stapled them together side by side, handed it to the teacher, both marked with 0 and recommended escalation to administration for plagiarism. He agreed. I used to teach ESL. The question was, Q. If a group of fish is called a school, what do we call a group of birds? A high school. Hey, at least they're learning what puns and dad jokes are. The assignment was to write a 1-page description of a topic you wanted to write about. Question. Description of why you are interested, and who would care. Student hands in a 3-page plagiarism of several news stories. It definitely took them longer to find and connect that material than it would have taken to just do the actual work. It's the only time I've ever done this, but I failed her outright in the 2nd week of school. If you are so dumb as to not do a simple assignment in your own words, especially one that is the basis for the entire course, and to hand in a blatant plagiarism, you do not get to proceed. Maybe she was moonlighting as a reporter at several different news agencies, and you just failed one of the greatest journalistic minds the world has ever known. 30 years from now she'll recount the time some dumbass teacher failed her on an assignment years ago. People will laugh. People will clap. I'll never forget this answer from a Reading quiz about great explications. Q. What were Mrs. Joe's last words? A. Mrs. Joe walked over to her husband sitting down in his chair, leaned into his ear and delicately whispered, "Frick this crap," or something like that. Dude got 1 out of 4 points for that. When I was in high school, my gym teacher asked the class what the most important meal of the day was. The first and only answer he got was Chick-fil-A. It sent the whole class into laughter and the teacher told him to go run a mile. Joke answer to a joke question. I don't really see what this teacher's problem is. On the AP Physics exam, my answer to find the charge of the outer shell was a picture of a bunny in a lab coat attaching a car battery to a turtle. You know, to find the charge of the shell. Needless to say, I did not pass that exam. Of course, the bunny should have attached a multimeter to the shell to find out how much the voltage dropped from the maximum. Snapchat from my buddy who's a teacher. Q. What state is Mercury at room temperature? A. Planet. I suppose not technically incorrect. I am a teacher of Reddit. In my time, I have seen many answers that could be considered by some to be BS. These answers have been on several different mediums, including but not limited to tests, quizzes, and other forms of coursework. Just restate the question as an answer, in hopes that the teacher just scans the paper to see if you wrote anything. Q. The 2018 FIFA World Cup will be held in Venezuela. T. F. Justify your answer. A. F. The 2018 FIFA World Cup will not be held in Venezuela. My mother taught English Lit for a number of years. Her students had to write a poem, and one of them handed in the lyrics to Hotel California. She was like, "You do know I own a radio, right? Comma guitar solo. What an interesting line of highest class poetry." Not a teacher, but he was one of the students I graduated with. Essay prompt. Write an essay on something that isn't an art, but treat it like an art. Should take 1 page. X. The art of tying your shoes. His essay. The art of writing a short essay. The art of writing a very short essay is quite simple. Use this as an example. Teacher's response. I don't know if this is brilliant or lazy. Comma, I don't know if this is brilliant or lazy. If you have to ask, it's art. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.